Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chele Gimel, and Mir Hashem today we will be learning Daf Ayin Zayin Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the second line in the Shulchan Aruch on Ayin Zayin Amid Beis, Siman Shin Aleph Sif Beis. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Esuna Batzara Bashivya. Ha'im debei bayam ubein bayabasha hamakayim yirachem alehem v'yetziim mitzara l'rvacha me'afela la'ira mishib l'geula hashta bagolo v'zman kariv v'neimar amen. Our learning should also be a schus refuah shalema for Meshemer ben Esther Fradel, Tzvi ben Leah Miriam, Chava Hadassah bas Rezel Serel, Devara bas Shosha Bina, and the Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol makayim shehem. So, in the beginning of Siman Shin Aleph, the Mechaber told us of a very interesting Isser. The Mechaber told us, Ein Lorutz b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to run on Shabbos. Not only are you not allowed to run, but we saw in the Ramah, you're not allowed to take very long strides. Your stride should not be more than an amma long. How do we calculate that amma? Well, there's when you're standing and if you would freeze in the middle of walking, so you have 1 foot behind, 1 foot in front, you have a gap between the 2 feet. The gap between the 2 feet, the Mishnah Berurah tells us, is typically, by an average-sized person, it's typically approximately a half an amma. A half an amma is about 1 foot. And then the foot itself is also a half an amma. So between the gap between the feet and the front foot, you've got an amma. That's the typical stride. One should not be taking any strides that are longer than that. Then, we also spoke out yesterday, even if one is not taking particularly long strides, one should not run on Shabbos. So you don't run, even if your running is comprised of short strides, but you don't run on Shabbos. Now, why don't you run? Why is there an Isser, a prohibition to run on Shabbos? So we saw in the Mishnah Berurah, the Chavetz Chaim explained to us, we have a pasuk in Yeshayahu. The pasuk says, it's speaking about Shabbos, and the pasuk says, V'chibadetoi, you should honor Shabbos, you should be mechabed Shabbos. V'chibadetoi, if you honor Shabbos, me'asois derachecha, from performing your typical activities. Me'asois derachecha. But the word drachecha, the shorish of drachecha, is derech. A derech is a pathway, something that somebody walks on. So, from the choice of words that the pasuk used, v'chibadetoi me'asois drachecha, the Chazal learned that we should not walk in the typical weekday fashion. What does that mean? Well, during the week, people are very busy. People are busy, they're going, they're coming, they're going to work. So, they walk fast, they take big strides. On Shabbos you're at rest. Shabbos is Ba Shabbos Ba Menucha. So on Shabbos, we walk slow, we take small strides. That's proper Kibbutz Shabbos. Having said that, we now turn to Sif Beis, second line down, Ayin Zayin Amid Beis, where the Mechaber tells us, Bachurim, young boys, Hamis Angim Bikfitzasam Umurutzasam, who take joy in jumping around and running around. So the boys want to go play tag. They want to run around, all these games that the kids play. The girls, maybe, they want to skip. They want to play hopscotch. So the kids want to jump. They want to run. And this is the Einik Shabbos for them. That's their Tainug. So Bachurim hamis angim bikfitzasam umurutzasam mutter. For them, it is mutter for them to go and run and jump. This prohibition does not apply to them. Says the Mishnah Berurah, mutter afilu lechatchila shezeu einik shelahem, because for them this is einik Shabbos. Again, what's the prohibition of running on Shabbos? The whole prohibition is it's not proper kibbutz Shabbos. V'chibadetoi me'asois derachecha. We don't want you walking fast and running because that's a typical weekday activity. It's not an activity that is appropriate for Shabbos. But if the running and the jumping is Einik Shabbos, so then it is appropriate for Shabbos, and then it's mutter. Continues the Mechaber near the end of the second line, V'chein, and similarly, it's mutter for everybody, lir'ois kol davar shemis angim boi. If somebody wants to go run to see something interesting, somebody heard that there's something beautiful to see, and he wants to go run to go see it, you're allowed to go run for that. Because again, that's not asais derachecha. That's not walking fast and taking big strides in a typical weekday fashion. Now you're doing it for a Shabbos activity. You're doing it for Einik Shabbos to go see something, shemis angim boy, to go see something enjoyable. Now, if you read the Mechaber the way the Mechaber is written, you could misinterpret the Mechaber. It said the opening word of Sif Beis is Bachurim. We're talking about young boys. So you could read the Mechaber, Bachurim hamisangim bikfisasam umerutzasam, young boys who get enjoyment out of jumping and running, mutter, it's mutter for them to run and jump. V'chein, it's also mutter for Bachurim, lirois kaldarish hamisangim boy, to see anything that they want to go run, to go something enjoyable to go run and see. It's mutter for them to go run. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, that's not the way you read it. Mishnah Berurah is cut vav. V'chein lirois pirush shekol adam mutter lorutz kidei lirois davar shemis aneg boy. The end over here of the Mechaber's phrase, v'chein lirois, is not going back on Bachurim. This is going on everybody. Bachurim who enjoy running and jumping, they're allowed to run and jump because that's Einik Shabbos for them. So too, anybody else, any adult, if somebody tells me, hey, you got to come quick, you got to come see this, and he has to run to go see it, if that's an Einik Shabbos, that's also mutter. It's mutter for everyone. Now, there's a very interesting Ramah here. Says the Ramah, v'chein, and similarly, mutter l'tayil. It's permissible to go for a walk on Shabbos. Now, you have to understand the background of this Ramah in order to understand the Ramah. Let's remember, since the beginning of this Siman, we're talking about the prohibition against running. We never spoke about a prohibition against walking, unless you're walking with exceptionally big strides. That's not what the Ramah says here. The Ramah doesn't give us over here a case where you're allowed to walk with big strides. The Ramah just says, "V'chei mutar l'tayil," you're allowed to go for a walk. Well, why would I think that you're not allowed to go for a walk? That has nothing to do with v'chibadetoi me'asais derachecha. V'chibadetoi me'asais derachecha prohibits running or taking very big strides. What does that have to do with walking? Why do I need a Ramah to tell me v'chein mutar l'tayil, that you're allowed to go for a walk? So to understand this, you have to know what it's based on. It's based on a Tosefta. The Tosefta is a Brisa. The Brisa says, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, the Tosefta, Ein rotzin b'Shabbos, you're not allowed to run on Shabbos, kidei lihis amel, in order to exercise. What does lihis amel mean? The shirish of lihis amel is omel, is work. You're not allowed to run to work. What does that mean, to run to work? It doesn't mean to run to work being the place, like I'm running to the office. That's not what it means. It's running as work. You know what that means? That means exercise. Or in the words of the Mishnah Berurah, we'll see kidei lihis chamim, in order to get heated up, to break a sweat, aka exercise. So the Brisa says, Ein rotzin b'Shabbos kidei lihis amel. You're not allowed to go jog for exercise on Shabbos. Continues the Tosefta, aval mitayel kedarkoi, but you could walk in a normal fashion, afilu kol hayom kuloi, even all day. Now, there's a big machlokes how exactly to understand this brisa. The way the Mechaber seems to understand it, and what we're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah, is that the Tosefta is saying, we're talking here about a prohibition against running. That's what we've been speaking about since the beginning of Shin Aleph. But we have a Tosefta to say that says, you're not allowed to run lihis amel. You're not allowed to run to go do exercise. Now, based on the beginning of Sif Beis, we could have made a compelling argument that it should be mutter to go jogging for exercise. Because look what we've seen so far. We've seen you're not allowed to run on Shabbos. But Bachurim who want to play tag, or they want to do races, they are allowed to run. Why? Because it's Einik Shabbos. You're not allowed to run on Shabbos. But if you have to go run to see something enjoyable, you're allowed to run. Why? Because it's Einik Shabbos. You go talk to a jogger, one of these people who runs 5 miles every single day, rain, shine, snow, 20 degrees outside, they're running. Running for them is enjoyment. So maybe to run kidei lihis amel, to run for exercise, if you enjoy jogging for exercise, we can make a compelling argument that that should be mutter. Why not? That's my Einik Shabbos. I like to run. So he likes to play tag. He wants to go run to see a beautiful tree. I want to run 5 miles to jog. So why can't I run? That would have been the argument. But the problem is, there's another reason why you're not allowed to run for exercise. Forget v'chibadetoi me'asos drachecha. You're right. As far as the isser of running on Shabbos that comes from v'chibadetoi me'asos drachecha, as far as that halach is concerned, maybe you would be allowed to run on Shabbos for exercise. Because for you, it's enjoyment. It's Einik Shabbos. It's like playing tag. But there's a new problem. The problem is that exercise, what is the point of exercise? The point of exercise is to make your body healthy, right? It's a cardiovascular aerobic exercise. It's supposed to make your body healthy. Well, in Cain, if so, that's a refuah. Now, you're not allowed to do things for refuah purposes on Shabbos, because there's a gzera that we're going to learn about. We've got quite a ways to go till we get there, of shchikas samimonim. The Chazal were afraid that if you do things for the purposes of refuah on Shabbos, you might come to grind up herbs and spices in order to make some kind of a medicine. You might come to compound a drug. You'll take out your mortar and pestle and you'll start grinding up herbs and spices to make a drug. Now that would be also on Shabbos. That would be an Issa Daraisa potentially. So because of this gzera, they were afraid that you might come to shchikas samimonim. They forbade anything that's being done specifically and obviously for refuah purposes. Oh, you want to run lihis amel? Running for exercise, that shmeks of refuah. It looks like refuah. And since you're doing it for refuah, it's also because of the gzera, mishum shchikas samimonim. Now, of course, if somebody has to do something for refuah purposes on Shabbos, if you have a chayla sheish by sakana, certainly pikuach nefesh, you're allowed to do things for refuah. But on a general sense, 30,000 feet, if we're not dealing with a real chayla, so then you're not allowed to do things for refuah because of this gzera of shchikas samimonim. Now, if you understand the brisa that way, so what the brisa is telling you is like this: you're not allowed to run on Shabbos kedei lehis amel, because running on Shabbos kedei lehis amel, that's something. Somebody sees you jogging, they understand why you're doing it. You're jogging for your health. That's refuah. That's also because of shchikas samimonim. But, says the brisa, aval mitayil kedarkai afilu kol hayoim kulai. You want to go walk? Walking is also a very healthy exercise. You want to walk for an exercise, that you're allowed to do. So to be mitayil lihis amel, to walk for exercise, you are allowed to do. Now, how come you're allowed to walk for exercise and you're not allowed to run for exercise? What that's based on is another Gemara. We're going to see there are times that you eat something for refuah, right? Now, there's different types of things that people eat for refuah. Some of the things that people eat for refuah, only people who need a refuah eat those things. Then there are things that people eat for refuah that a lot of people eat. A lot of people eat these foods. Somebody might be having ginger. Somebody wants to put some ginger in his tea because he was told that ginger is going to be good for his indigestion. But people use ginger as a spice. People drink ginger ales. I don't know. Ginger is not necessarily something that a person only eats because of refuah. But there are things that people only eat because of refuah. The halacha is, a food that only people who need refuah eat, that you're not allowed to eat on Shabbos. Why? Because it's obvious that you're doing refuah. It's clear that what you're doing is for refuah purposes. Since it's clear that what you're doing is for refuah purposes, we make the gzera of shchikas samimonim, and you're not allowed to eat it. But if it's a food, if it's broccoli, a lot of people like broccoli. So you're eating broccoli because of a refuah. You're eating prunes because you're feeling a little bit constipated, so you want to eat a lot of prunes today. So you're eating prunes for refuah. But a lot of people eat prunes. People eat prunes because they're sweet and they're tasty. So you're allowed to eat prunes on Shabbos for refuah because it's not obvious that what you're doing is refuah. Nobody's going to look at you and say, oh, you're taking medicine. No, you're eating a food. So since you're eating a food that even healthy people eat, that's not called doing refuah on Shabbos. It's not also mishum shchikas samimonim. But if you would be eating a food that's only eaten by people who need refuah, that's clear that you're doing refuah. That's also mishum shchikas samimonim. So too over here. When you're jogging, you're exercising for your health. You're exercising for your health. That's also mishum shchikas samimonim. You're going for a walk. I see you walking down the street. I don't know that you're doing it for health. Maybe you're just doing it because you wanted to get out and get some fresh air. Maybe you're even walking to go visit somebody. It's not muchach milsa that what you're doing is refuah, and therefore that's mutter because of shchikas samamonim. There's no problem. There's no issue there. That's what this Ramah is coming to tell you. So this Ramah, v'chein mutter l'tayil, the Ramah is coming and the Ramah is telling us, yes, we just spoke about a whole isser, you're not allowed to run on Shabbos. We gave you a cutout. The cutout is, if the running is being done for Einik Shabbos, like the kids who want to go play tag, or like running to go see something interesting, that's mutter on Shabbos. Okay, how about jogging? Is jogging mutter on Shabbos because it's Einik Shabbos if you enjoy jogging? No, that's usser. Why is that usser? Mishum shchikas samamonim. But you know what's mutter? Says the Ramah, v'chein mutter l'tayil. But to go walk, that's mutter, and it's not even usser because of shchikas samamonim. Let's see this inside in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Zion. V'chein mutter l'tayil. Says the Mishnah Berurah, afilu im kavanasai lehisamel, even if you're walking for exercise, or lehischamem, in order to get heated up, to break a sweat, mishum refuah, and you're doing it for your health, mikamakayim shari, it is nevertheless mutter, kevin de loy muchacha milsa sha'isakei l'refuah, because it is not obvious that you're doing it for refuah purposes. So it's like eating a food that even healthy people eat. Aval aser lorutz kidei sheyischamem l'refuah, but it is forbidden to go jog and run for exercise and for refuah. Even though you might enjoy it, it's also anyway. Kevin demucha chamilsa, since it's obvious and clear that you're doing it because of refuah, and therefore also mishum shchikas samamonim, and therefore it's also because of the gzeira of shchikas samamonim. We're afraid if you get busy doing things that are obviously done for your health, you might come to grind up herbs and spices. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'yesh machmir nafilu b'til. There are those that are machmir, even when it comes to taking a geshmak, a walk for exercise. Im kavanasai lehis amel refuah, if the specific kavana is to do it for exercise. Okay, moving along to Sif Gimel, 3 lines down in the Shulchan Aruch. So we have this isser. You're not allowed to run on Shabbos. You're not even allowed to take very long strides on Shabbos. You're also not allowed to jump on Shabbos. Okay, says the Mechaber, hay, somebody is walking in a normal mutter fashion. V'higia la'amas hamayim, and now he comes to a stream. So he's walking, he wants to get from point A to point B, and now there's a stream in his way, and he wants to cross the stream. Okay, let's think about this for a minute. If somebody wants to cross a narrow stream, he has a few different options. One option is, if it's narrow enough, he might be able to step over it if he uses a very long stride. He might be able to jump over it. Maybe he could do a straight jump, lift both feet off the ground and jump over the stream. Or if not, maybe he could do like a running jump. He could run a little bit, leap over the stream. So that's one option. Another option is, okay, I got to get to the other side of the stream. Maybe a half a mile down, maybe there's a little bridge over the stream. So I could walk a half a mile out of my way, to the left, and then cross the stream, and then come back a half a mile out of my way to get to where I need to be. So I could walk a mile out of my way, and that's another way that I could cross the stream. Or there's yet one more option how I could cross the stream, and that is I could take normal, very Shabbos-stika steps, narrow strides, and I could walk through the stream and get wet. So I seem to have basically 3 options in front of me of how I could get to the other side of the stream. The Mechaber is going to tell us here which one of these options he should pick. Says the Mechaber, fellow is walking, v'higia la'amas hamayim, and he comes to a stream. Yachol ledalgoi v'likpoitz aleha. He could go ahead and skip. Skip means he's going to take like a leap. He's going to keep 1 foot in front of him and 1 foot behind him, and he's going to leap over the stream. V'lik bites, or he could jump. I think they call it a straight jump, or a dead jump, a straight jump. I think a straight jump. Where you lift off with both feet. So you could skip over it, you could jump over it. Afilu imhi rechava, even if the stream is so wide. She'ena yochel lahanyach ragloi rishona, so that when you leap over it, your first foot, the foot that's ahead of you, will not touch the ground, koidim sheyakar shnia, where before the back foot leaves the ground. So you take a very, very long stride over here. You're still allowed to do this. So in other words, what's going to happen over here is there's going to be a point in time where both of your feet off the ground, right? Let's translate the Mechaber very carefully. You could do this afilu imi rechava, even if the stream is so wide, she'ena yachal lanyach ragla rishona, so that your front foot is not going to hit the ground. Koidem sheyakar shnia, you can't put down the first foot before the second foot leaves the ground, right? So your front foot is going to hit the ground after your back foot already left the ground. So there's going to be a point in time at which both feet are off the ground. So that's really jumping. That's the chiddush that the Mechaber is telling me here. The Mechaber is telling me you came to the stream, you could jump over it, even if it's a real bona fide jump. And even if you're going to need a really long stride, you're allowed to do that. Umutav sheyedaleg, and it's better that you should use one of those options, mimashi yakifena. That's a better option than going a mile out of your way and going a half a mile that way and then a half a mile back. It's better to go jump over the stream and risk violating a little bit this because you're jumping, you're running, you're taking a big stride. It's better to do that than to walk out of your way. Because to go walk out of your way is also a Shabbos problem. You're doing a tircha yisera. You're engaging in unnecessary tircha, in unnecessary work. That's also not Shabbos appropriate. So given the two choices, says the Mechaber, it is better to do the jump over the stream than it is to do the tircha yisera of going around. How about the third option? To walk through the stream and get wet? Says the Mechaber, v'aser laverba. But to walk through the stream and get wet, that's aser. Why? Shelo yavai lidei schita. We're afraid. If you walk through the stream and you get soaked, what might you do when you get to the other side? You might wring out your garments and squeeze out the water. That would be the isser of schita, squeezing out water from something. That isser is a tolda of one of the lamites malachas, the malach of malabain, of laundering. Laundering is one of the lamites malachas. Now, when you launder, first you soak clothing, and then you squeeze out the water. So schita is a tolada of malabain. We're afraid if we allow you to walk through the stream and get wet, you might come to do schita, which is a tolda of malabain. So again, what the Mechaber told us over here is, we've been discussing this isser of running and jumping on Shabbos. This gentleman is going for a walk, he comes to a stream, he needs to get the other side. He's got three choices in front of him. One, jump over the stream. We said you're not really allowed to jump. Choice number two, go for a long walk and go out of your way. That's tircha yisera on Shabbos. Choice number three, walk through the stream and get wet. Walk through the stream and get wet. Now you're risking that you might come to schita, which is an issa daraisa, because it's a tolda of malabin. Says the Mechaber, you know which one you should do? You should jump over the stream. That's the choice that you should take. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Ches, Ledalgoi v'likpoitz. It's mutter for you to either skip over the stream or jump over the stream. One of these two choices, dilug and kvitza, says the Mishnah Berurah, dilug mikri shamafsik raglov berechava. Dilug is taking a very, very long stride or a leap, where you do like a running jump, and one foot is in front of you and one foot is in back of you. Ukvitza, jumping, that's doing a straight jump, where you lift both feet off the ground at the same time. That's better, said the Mechaber, it would be better to do that than to go out of your way and go around. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if jumping over the stream is simply not an option, maybe the stream is too wide, so then you're allowed to do the tircha yisera of going around. Well, guess what? Now it just became not really a tircha yisera. You got to get to the other side and you can't jump over it. So go around. Avalavarba, but to use option number three and walk through the stream and get wet, usher. that would still be aser, because that could bring you to a Daraisa Schita. We're not going to be matter you walking through a stream and getting your clothes wet, unless we're talking about the instances, the circumstances that we're going to discuss shortly in Sif Dalid and Sif Vav. Having said that, let's go to Sif Dalid. If somebody is walking for a mitzvah purpose, Kigoin, for example, lahakbil pnei rabbi, he's going Shabbos afternoon to go see his Rebbe. He's going to learn by his Rebbe. Or he has not a Rebbe, but he has a chavrusa that's a lot bigger than he is in learning. So he wants to go to this person who's gadol mimenu b'chachma. In that case, says the Mechaber, yochel laverba. If you need to go through a stream to go to your Rebbe, or you need to go through a stream to go to your chavrusa who's bigger than you are in learning, then you're allowed to walk through the stream, and we're not going to be worried that you're going to come to the Isser of Schita. But, continues the Mechaber, ubelvad sheyaseh shinui. But when you go through the stream, you have to do something in an abnormal fashion. Kigoin, for example, that you don't extend your arms underneath your garment. I could show you what this means. My face is going to go a little bit out of the picture for a moment. I think it's going to go out of the camera. What this means is, when you go through a stream, you lift up. Remember, in the olden days, they used to wear these long cloaks. Now you're going through a stream, so you pick up your cloak, right? You pick the bekisha up so that you could walk through the stream, and the hem of the bekisha is not going to go into the water. Now, the way they used to do that, they weren't wearing a closed bekisha like this is. They were wearing a cloak. They would put their hand inside the cloak, and then they would lift up the hem of the cloak, kind of like this. They would lift up the hem of the cloak and lift it up over their shoulders. That's being moitzi yadai, taking your hand out, mitachas fas chalukai, underneath the hem of the garment. That would be the normal thing to do when you were walking through a stream and you didn't want to get your cloak wet. Says the Mechaber, if you're going for a dvar mitzvah, even though normally we don't let you walk into a stream and get your clothes wet because we're afraid you're going to come to wring them out, you're going to come to schita. But if you're going for a dvar mitzvah, we'll let you go through the stream. Remember, this is an issa d'Rabbanan. Schita could be an issa d'Oraisa. But the gzeira that you're not allowed to get your clothes wet, that's only a takana d'Rabbanan. We're going to relax the takana d'Rabbanan, but with a caveat. The caveat is you have to do something in an abnormal fashion that to remind you not to wring your clothing out. So what do? Don't lift your cloak in the normal way. Lift your cloak in an abnormal way. That will remind you not to do schita. Continues the Mechaber here. V'asa lavar b'sandoloi. But you're not allowed to walk through the stream wearing sandals. Why? These type of sandals were not tight on the feet. We're afraid that when you walk into the water and you have the resistance of the water on your sandal, it might fall off, and then you'll come to pick up the sandal and you'll do haitzah. You'll be carrying it in Rishos HaRabim on Shabbos. Mutter. But if you're wearing a shoe, there's no problem. A proper shoe is fixed on your foot. It's tied on your foot. We're not afraid that it's going to come off. Mishnah Berurah is cutting yud. If you're going for a mitzvah, you're going to greet Pnei Rabba, you're going to meet your Rebbe. V'vadim Pnei Aviv, the Gemara in Yuma says, or if you're going to do Kibbut Av, you're going to visit your father on Shabbos. Take a look at the Magen Avram. Chakasov writes, the ish v'isha shavin b'mitzvah sakbalas panim. You would think that maybe this dvar mitzvah of going to greet your Rebbe, maybe that's something that only pertains to a man. The Magen Avram says no, a woman could go to the drasha also. But when it comes to a woman, the Chavetz Chaim says it has to be bereshus baila. It has to be with the permission of her husband. Ice cotton yod aleph. So somebody could be going to meet his Rebbe. Doesn't necessarily have to be a Rebbe. It could be just somebody who's bigger than him b'chachma. La'afuke, this comes to contrast, harav eitzel talmudoi, the aser. So we're saying like this. You want to go to the Rav on Shabbos, and you have to go through a stream, you could go and you could get wet. You have to go to your chavrusa, but not a stam chavrusa. A chavrusa is bigger than you, that you're allowed to do. How about the Rav or the Rebbe? Is the Rebbe allowed to go to his Talmud? Now let's think about this for a minute. When the Talmud comes to the Rebbe, why is the Talmud coming to the Rebbe? To learn by him, right? And we're saying that that's a dvar mitzvah, so you could go through the stream and you could get wet. So when the Rebbe goes to the Talmud, he's also going to learn, right? Is it the same dvar mitzvah? If we're going to let the Talmud walk through the stream and get wet to get to the Rebbe, will we let the Rebbe walk through the stream to get wet to get to the Talmud? The end result is the same. They're going to sit down and they're going to learn together. So is it one and the same? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. That's why the Mechaber said you could have the Talmud going to the Rebbe, or you could have somebody going to somebody who's bigger than him. Bechachma, la'afuki arav etzel talmidei ta'aser. But a Rebbe can't go to a Talmud. The imu Talmud shetzarech le'rabbi be'ezeh dvarim. But sometimes you have a case where there's a Rebbe and a Talmud, but it's not the Talmud that needs the Rebbe. It's the Rebbe right now that needs the Talmud. Why would that be? Hein mitzad chidudoi v'charifusai. Sometimes you have a Rebbe. The Rebbe knows a lot more than the Talmud. But the Talmud's a very sharp guy. The Talmud is he's a real bar hochi. He really knows his beans. He doesn't have all the book knowledge, but he's very sharp, very smart, and the Rebbe is working on something. And the Rebbe says, I got to discuss this with my Talmud. If I could discuss this with my Talmud Ruvain, he'll know how to ask the right question. He'll pick up the right nuance. And by speaking to him, I'll work out what I need to work out. So yes, I'm the Rebbe, he's the Talmud. I know a lot more than he does. But right now, me, the Rebbe, I need that Talmud. So if that's the case, if the Rebbe needs the Talmud, or it could be another reason he needs the Talmud. Maybe the Rebbe has a Talmud, but that Talmud also learnt or is learning by other Rabbeim. And this Rebbe, Rebbe number one, says to himself, it could be that my Talmud, Pliny, maybe he heard something about this from a different gadol. So now I need the Talmud because I think he might have information for me. He might have something for me that he heard from another Rebbe. In that case, because of Ataz, then the Taz writes, the mutter loylav or benar, then the Rebbe would be mutter to go through the stream and get wet. Because right now, if the Rebbe needs the Talmud, that means that in a sense, right now the Talmud is bigger than the Rebbe. So then it's Misha Gadol Mimenu B'Chachma. Right now the Talmud is bigger than me in Chachma. B'Haraya, he has a certain Chachma that I need. Either it's his wits, or it's information that he has that I don't have. But whatever it is, right now he's bigger than me. I need him. So in that case, I could go through the stream and get wet, as long as I lift up my garment in an abnormal fashion. Well, the Sefer Tosefes Shabbos also the Sefer Tosefes Shabbos takes issue with the Taz. He disagrees. V'marav mistapik be'ezeh davar. Let's say the Rav, he has a question, he's besupik, he has a doubt about something. And he simply wants to go ask the Talmud. He thinks the Talmud might actually know something that he doesn't know. Then you could follow the Taz, because now it sounds like the Talmud in this instance really is bigger than the Rebbe. The Rebbe has a suffix on something, and he thinks the Talmud might have the answer. So then the Talmud right now, in that facet, the Talmud's taka bigger than him. Now, Ois Cotton Yud Beis over here, if you take a look back in the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber said that if you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah, you could go through the stream, you could get your garment wet, but you have to pick up your garment in an abnormal fashion so that you do something to remind yourself not to do schita. Then the Ramah said, Ayin l'kamon simin taf reish yud gimel sif hey, or b'sif ches b'hago. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut yud beis. What's this talking about? Hainu, the reference of the Ramah is the Sham Mavur over there. The Ramah explains the afilu im ika darka achrin lahakif. Let's say you're taka going for a dvar mitzvah, and you have multiple options of how to get across the stream. One way is you could walk through the stream and get wet, but there's another option. You could walk a half a mile out of your way in one way, and a half a mile out of your way to come back. So, okay, You still have another option here. Why are you running right away to the option of walking through the stream and getting wet, which requires us to relax the Yisad Rabbanon of getting your clothing wet because we're worried about you coming to Schita and telling you that you should do it with a Shinui? Maybe instead you should walk out of the way. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. The Mishnah Berurah says that over there the Ramah says, even if you could walk out of your way, mutav yoser lavar b'mayim milaharbis behilach. In this case, where you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah and you're faced with two choices, choice number one, walk out of your way. Choice number two, go through and get wet. In this case, you should go through and get wet. Kevin, do over the Dvar Mitzvah, since you're doing this for a Dvar Mitzvah. So in other words, let's cop what we're saying over here. In the beginning of Sif Gimel, we said that given the choice of walking out of your way or going through the stream and getting wet, you should walk out of your way. Don't go get wet. Now you're coming to a chash of schita. Don't get wet. No, walk out of your way. But over here in Sif Dalid, when we're talking about somebody who's going for a Dvar Mitzvah, then we say get wet and don't get out of the way. However, the Achrayim reached the conclusion over there. The Achrayim actually reached the conclusion that no. Even in Sif Dalid, when you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah, better walk out of your way than getting wet. Okay, let's move along to Sif Hey, 3 lines off the bottom, says the Mechaber. Ha'hoylech the Dvar Mitzvah, again, a person is walking for a Dvar Mitzvah, mutar lavar b'mayim af b'chazara. So the guy is going to the drasha. We told him he's allowed to walk through the stream and get wet, as long as he lifts his garment in an abnormal fashion. He goes to the drasha. Wow, that was a great shear. It was a great drasha. Now he wants to go home. He goes home, he meets the same stream on the way home. Now is he allowed to walk through the stream and get wet? Now he's not going for a Dvar Mitzvah. The Dvar Mitzvah is over. Says the Mechaber, even on the way back, he's allowed to go through the stream. Why? Because we don't want to put a stumbling block in front of this guy for the future. If we're going to tell him that on the way home he's not allowed to walk through the stream, then you know what's going to happen next week? Next week he's not going to go to the drasha. He's going to say it's very nice that on the way to the drasha I could walk through the stream and I don't got to walk a mile out of my way. But on the way home I'm going to have to walk a mile out of my way. I'm not interested in walking a mile out of my way. So we let him go through the stream on the way home, which is not really for a Dvar Mitzvah, because we want to make sure that next week he'll go to the drasha. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if we don't let him come home, then next week he won't go. Sivav, 2 lines off the bottom, somebody who's going not to hear the drasha, somebody who wants to walk to his apple orchard. Why does he want to walk to his apple orchard on Shabbos? He's afraid somebody might come and steal apples. So he wants to walk over to the apple orchard on Shabbos. Maybe he has over there a chair and a Gemara, and he wants to park himself by the apple orchard to watch his apple orchard. But to get to the apple orchard, he's got to cross the stream. Okay. On the way to the apple orchard, he could walk through the stream and get wet. Of course, he has to lift up his cloak in an abnormal fashion. But not when he comes home. So again, let's just assemble all this in our minds. It's Sif Gimel, you come to a stream, jump over it. Better jump over it than walking out of the way. Walking out of the way is a Terchi Yisera. Better jump over it than walk through it. Can't walk through it, you're going to get wet. Takanas Chachamim, we're afraid you might come to Schita. Okay. Sif Dalid, you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah. Oh, you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah? If you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah, you could go get wet. Why? For a Dvar Mitzvah, we're willing to relax the Takanas Chachamim against getting your clothing wet. Because you're going for a Dvar Mitzvah. So go through for a Dvar Mitzvah, lift up your cloak in an abnormal fashion, so you shouldn't come to Schita. Okay, how about coming home? Oh, you went for a real bona fide Dvar Mitzvah? You went to go learn with your Rebbe? You went to go learn with your Chavrusa who's bigger than you? When you go through the stream and get wet. Even when you come back, you're allowed to get wet. Why? Because if we don't let you get wet when you come back, next week you might not go. Okay, next case. You're going to watch your apple orchard. The Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us that going to watch your apple orchard is also a shtickle mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? There's a mitzvah to protect your money. It's not money. Who cares about money? No, Torah's chasam money shall Yisrael. Efes ki lo yebecha evyon. The Torah doesn't want you to become poor. So there's a shtickle, a mitzvah, to go watch your money. So you have to go watch your apple orchard. You're allowed to walk through the stream and get wet. But how about when you come home? No. When you come home, we're not going to let you go ahead and get wet. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Lish by Peroisim. Shmiras b'maynei nami have a ksas mitzvah. Protecting your money is also a shtickle mitzvah. But in this mitzvah, to go watch your money, we're not going to let you get wet on the way home. Why not? When you go to the drasha, we let you get wet on the way home. That's a mitzvah. So how come over here we don't let you get wet on the way home? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. Protecting your money is not the same mitzvah as going to the drasha or going to the bismedrash. Also, why do we let you get wet on the way home when you want to go to the drasha? Because we want to make sure that next week you're also going to go to the drasha. And if you're going to remember next week, last week I couldn't come home because I couldn't walk through the stream, maybe next week you're not going to go. Do we have that problem here? If we tell you, oh, you went to watch your apple orchard, but you can't go through the stream on the way home, next week you're not going to go watch your apple orchard. Oh, yes, you will. If you're afraid people are stealing your apples, you're going to go watch your apple orchard next week too. First of all, we should relax on Issa D'Rabbanan because you might not watch your apple orchard. Fine, don't watch your apple orchard. It's your choice. You want to lose your money, lose your money. Going to the bismedrash, that we don't want to risk. We want to make sure you go to the bismedrash. Your money, your apples? We're worried about your apples, but we're not that worried about your apples. And also says and also the truth is, if you need to watch your apples, you're going to go, even if you have to walk back and you can't get wet. The Adam Bal Alma Moinoi. Askat Tesvav, Lava Bamayim, Ubavad Shaloyoit Yadav. But of course, you have to pick up your garment in an abnormal fashion. Kidala El B'Sev Dalid. Okay? We're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Schus of limud HaTorah should be begging against Klai for all the Baruch Shem Shisen. Yeshua's for first Parashat and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek. B'meher v'yameinu Amen. Be well.